Hello, welcome to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. I'm Dino Verrelli, founder and CEO of Project Purple. We have an exciting interview coming up with a very special guest after a few quick updates. Since 2010, we've contributed over $3 million and counting to pancreatic cancer research efforts. We've also allocated over $1 million worth of aid to more than 1,300 patients and families through our patient aid programs. Your monthly or one-time gift can improve patients' lives through research and assistance programs. You can donate now at projectpurple.org. Pancreatic cancer does not rest, and neither will we. Your support is truly appreciated. If you're looking to get involved in one of our events, whether that means joining a run team, participating in a virtual run walk, group fitness, golf, or anything else you can think of, visit projectpurple.org/events to learn more. Without further ado, let's meet our special guest today, coming to us all the way. And that was a big all the way, but you're not that far, but you're far enough from...
Still on the East Coast, same time zone.
Still on the East Coast. Yeah, you're still in the same time zone, but you're just like 3,000. Well, trying to do the math here. I think maybe it is 3,000. Well, Florida. You're down in southern
3,
Florida.
More like, I think it's 1,300 to
Yeah, it's like, I was going to say 15, but 13 sounds about right. Yeah. It's about 1,300 miles from Connecticut, where our studio is. But I will say this, Camille Moses, by the way, pancreatic cancer survivor, welcome.
Thank you.
The weather today here in Connecticut, I think our high is supposed to be 88. So it is Florida-like. It was, I think, I took my dog for a walk. I know we were talking about dogs before because you have a GSP. I took my dog for a walk early this morning at about 6 a.m. and it was about 58. So that's warm this time of year. Yeah. So it was a little muggy. So, but hey, no complaints, because when the weather is warm here in Connecticut, we embrace it. We love it. I'm not one of those like it's too hot kind of guys. As I've gotten older, I've despised winter and snow. So I embrace the warmth and the warmer temperatures. It's awesome. So thanks for taking the time today. I know we were playing catch up quite a bit here before we hit record. We've got a lot of things in common, not only here in this space, but then culturally and then also family wise as well, where we've kind of our families have crossed paths in New York and throughout the country. So excited to meet you for the first time. I know as we were playing catch up, you've been, I guess, like, you know, if you're in this space, and this is a compliment, first of all, if you've been in this space, you know, you've come up on like Google searches because of your story. And I'm going to say here, I'm going to go on a limb. I think it was before COVID that I think you did your video, right? Like, it was with Let's Win. Yeah. And so like, I think like when people probably Google search long-term stage 4 pancreatic cancer survivors, your story comes up. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, again, like the paths have kind of like, we've been on these like perpendicular pathways, but we haven't crossed. So excited to, and I know we didn't really talk much about your story.
No.
And 2016 for me is like such a blur because of that thing, COVID. Like, I think everything seems that much farther away. So I don't remember everything about your story. So I'm excited to hear your story firsthand. And with that, as I said, you know, this first segment of the podcast is really the guest opportunity to kind of share their story. We're hoping that people watching and listening are hearing this for the first time, just like myself. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to you to kind of share your story, your journey with pancreatic cancer.
All right. Well, first off, I'm so excited because we were catching up, and it's crazy how much we literally been in the same area, and I don't know how we haven't spoken before this. And I always say the pancreatic cancer community is small. As much as many people have pancreatic cancer, the community, I guess the long-term survivors, we all kind of know each other, you know, or know of each other's stories at least. I have a unique story, I think. And the reason I do share it is mainly to bring awareness. It's so important for somebody who's newly diagnosed to see a good story, because they're told, usually they're told these just horrible words and things, and they feel so down. And then everybody looks at you like, oh, I'm sorry, because they hear the word pancreatic, and immediately, they are, assuming the worst for you. So it's important, because if people looked at me like that, and I don't want people to feel that sadness. So I was diagnosed in 2012, and the first oncologist, I had some pain. I didn't know actually what was going on. I knew something was wrong, but I was 53 and I was otherwise really in good shape and healthy and very active, living in South Florida. At the time, I had 3 big dogs. So I was out 6 miles a day walking, and 10 miles like every bike ride, which was probably every other day of 10 miles. So really active, and swimming with my dogs. And then I started feeling out of breath, and starting to have some pains. And I had gone to urgent care a few times, and they told me it was menopause, onset of menopause. I was 53. So, oh, well, is this menopause? I didn't know. And, no one, even all my doctors knew, like my mother's history of pancreatic cancer. No one ever asked. They knew my father had died of prostate, my mother died of pancreatic. So I had gone to the doctor all the time, but then finally I went to the ER, and the ER ran a scan, and they're like, you have spots on your pancreas, liver, and lungs. And I was just like in shock. And of course, I thought about my mom right away. I thought, oh, this, I'm in big trouble. So I was admitted. They did a liver biopsy, and they confirmed, it was metastasized pancreatic cancer. The first oncologist there at that hospital came in, and he said, it's too late. Go home, prepare to die. Chemo's not going to work for you. And although I was on a lot of drugs and kind of came out of surgery from having a port in, I couldn't believe him. I was like, no. So immediately I got a second opinion, which that's what I talk about a lot, is getting that second opinion, because you're dealing with your life. I'm not going to let one doctor just tell me, yeah, no, there's no hope. And so I immediately got a second opinion at the University of Miami Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center. And the first day, I have to say, I was in there, I had this, horrible information. And I'll never forget when I saw the oncologist. He was really tall. When he walked in that room, I kind of felt like he ducked to come in. And they sort of swaggered in like this team of 3 of them, right? And I was like, all right. And, everybody started moving around real quick. And he had this little card, and he was measuring my liver. I didn't know what he was doing. And I'm like, he's calling out numbers, and they're putting everything. And I'm telling him I'm in pain, and he's pressing, and I'm like, no, grabbing his hand, stop. And then he got out the thing, and he wrote it down, the stages. I didn't know anything. The other doctor didn't say stage 1, I didn't know. So he put, stage 4 inoperable. And then he put the FOLFIRINOX, what it would be. And he goes, I'm going to treat you with this. And I start crying. And my daughter was there, my boyfriend, we were, everybody's crying in the room. And he immediately grabbed my face and said, stop crying and listen to me. And I kind of, stopped crying and listened to him. And he said, this will work. As long as your body can handle this, it will work. And honestly, from that day forward, I completely believed in my oncologist like you can't imagine. There's a bond there. And today I'm so close with my oncology nurse. She's now become the president of oncology nurses for the whole country. I get to watch her shine and soar. I met her on the worst day of my life, and they never treated me. They treated me like cancer was normal. That I was going to live. They were all talking about, oh yeah, they treat it like a chronic disease. They took all the negativity out. So then I believe so wholeheartedly in my oncologist and his team, I never listened to any outside source. I never looked at anything on the internet. I never looked at anything. Someone would occasionally say, oh, I know a survivor. And I'd go, did they have surgery? And they'd say, yes. I don't want to know about it. So I was didn't want to know because I felt from the very beginning, everyone is different. And no one is the same. So I didn't ever compare myself to others because I knew that I was an individual and that I didn't believe in, like, people would try to tell me statistics. And at that time, it was a 5-year survival rate. I mean, what was good about looking on the internet? Nothing. It was only going to add to fear and anxiety. And I was having such an amazing response. Every 3 months, my cancer was shrinking. So that enabled me to get more and more positive. And when I came in there, they were like, oh, it's the superstar. And then the neuropathy came, and I live in South Florida, and I'd come in there in Uggs, and my doc, oh, here she is, Puss in Boots. They used to call me when I walked in. Like, I became this really rock star of the cancer center that, wow, look at you. And and then I got to a point where the cancer was gone in the pancreas. There was a few spots left in the liver. And in 2013, after 17 months of doing FOLFIRINOX, it wasn't easy. It was 2012. It just come out. I don't think it was quite approved when I got it. What happened was, after 17 months, my doctor said, I'm going to give you a chemo holiday. And that was July 2013. And thank God I've never had to go back. So my holiday is expanded to, what are we, 2024, 12 years, 11 years later of no treatment.
So how many rounds did you do in the 17
34
months? Wow. So 34 rounds. And they said, hey, you have no evidence of disease of the cancer in your pancreas.
No. At 34, remember, now I'm very skinny. I'm very weak. I'm pretty beat up. Neuropathy really bad. And it was a break. I was given a 2-month break in 2013. So it was like a 2-month break that lasted, thank God, till now. Like, I've never had to go back, because after the 2-month break, there was a couple little spots left in the liver. Once they stopped chemo and I went back for the next scan, those spots went away.
So you do the 34 rounds, they put you on the break, and your scans... The break
last forever. They're stable. No one says no evidence of disease. They don't use that word. Here's the word they use with me is stable. And that's all I want to know. Your scan is stable. Your scan is stable. Your scan is stable. So that's why, like, in my car, I have this necklace with an anchor. I have a lot of anchor stuff because stability represents stability. So as long as I get stable scan, I don't read my scans. I don't read my report. I don't do that.
You don't go into my chart like
no, absolutely not. I have the best oncologist. Why do I need to go there? So I put and this is different. Everyone's an individual. All my trust goes into, plus I've made incredible relationships. I'm close with the director of the cancer center, he came there the same year, and now we're an NCI designated cancer center. So Dr. Neimer has grown the cancer center amazing. I'm close with my nurse. I'm close with the surgeon here in Sylvester. He plays golf with my boyfriend every weekend. So I'm in this, my phone is full of oncologists. Let's just say that.
Well, you're in the community,
right. So now I've become part of their community. So I know, God forbid something happens, I'm in a much better place, right, than I was 12 years ago. I went in there not knowing anyone. Now I know everyone. So I know that they're going to be there should I ever need them.
So I'm sure the audience is thinking this too. This first question here. So since July 13 to 2013, July of 2013 to here we are, May 2024.
Right.
9 years, excuse me. No. Yes.
No,
11.
11 years.
Oh, we're almost 11 years. So
Right.
10 years and 10 months.
July is, yeah.
Yeah, July will be 11 years. So
Right.
have you had other treatments or anything in that time frame?
Nothing.
Okay. So let's back up to, I know you threw it out there, and I know we talked about it before. Your mom dies of pancreatic cancer in 1984. 1984 was a lot different. There wasn't genetic testing. You can't even go back. Usually it's like 7 years for samples. So even when you're diagnosed in 12, there's no way to go back. And in 2012, I don't think genetic testing was a requirement.
Here's the problem with that, just to interrupt. Had I been diagnosed at Sylvester where I was treated, they would have taken the right tissue sample.
Correct.
Fortunately, I was diagnosed at a place where they already saw me as spots. She's a lost hope.
On that biopsy, yeah.
And they didn't take enough. So by the time I went to Sylvester and they asked for that tissue to profile it, there wasn't enough to profile. So that's the unfortunate. And that's why part of my message is always to get to the right type of center, because they're not going to do the right type of biopsy. That's where that fell out. And you're right, there wasn't genetic testing in 2012 like there is now.
Yeah. So have you done just like a germline?
I've had everything. I don't have any mutations. So
no
technically mutation. They don't know my risk factor. All they know is that it could be, because I was just at Miami Precision Medicine Conference and I was talking to the genetic counselors and who presented. And the only thing is that it could be that it's a mutation that just hasn't been discovered yet.
Correct. Yeah. Undefined significance. I mean, I think the frustrating part, as genetics has evolved, right? Like we know now, like I think the statistic is like up to 10% of the cases here in the United States could be genetic, right? But there's 80, and then there's another 10% that are potentially these IPMNs, right? These cysts, these cystic lesions, the cysts that form on the pancreas, I should say. So that's 20% potentially that we know somewhat, like if you have a genetic risk of the genes we know, right? That we know right now. And then the IPMNs, but there's still 80% of just sporadic risk, right? Like that we just don't know why, right? And that's for the mass majority of them. I mean, it's kind of fascinating. It's wild. So I want to even go back. I want to stay in that early stage. So you said like symptomatically though, like you were super active. Like you were saying like the biking, the swimming. I mean, I had 2 dogs. I mean, there's a lot of like, a dog is a lot of work, but like throw in 3, and we mentioned you got a GSP. Like if you don't run those things and don't have like
2 at the same, I had 2 and Bear, who I've had over the years since the 90s. I have one now, but at the time when I was sick, I had 2 German short hairs and Bear, who I rescued off the street, who was like 85 pounds. So I would walk
so
like
these are not like Chihuahuas. Camille, that's what I'm trying to like get the point here. Like I know GSPs, like you got to work them or else they'll rip your heart. They'll rip everything apart. But like, it's not like you had like toy Chihuahuas here. Like, these are working dogs.
I always said real dogs.
Yeah.
And then they have to swim. And then they have to swim after.
Correct.
It's pretty much like having toddlers is how the thing I can compare it to, because you had to entertain them to now bring them, because you got 3 big dogs in your house. And at one point I did have 4, but my oldest passed away, and then I had 3 for the longest time. So during my cancer battle, I had 3 big dogs. Yeah.
So your work, I mean, so audience watching, listening, like this is like work. So like you talk about having, so like you're doing all this activity, physical activity. So you got to be in relatively, like, it's not couch potato to 5K. Like you're in shape, doing all these things. And then you start to feel kind of funky, which is kind of interesting. Like in 2012 that they told you it was like, I guess now the term that they use is like perimenopause. Like I hear that now, like people like in today, like, fast forward, 12 years now, like that's like a buzzword, like women in their early 50s, like they're not feeling well, they gain weight, oh, you're perimenopause. So it's kind of interesting that 12 years ago, they were kind of trying to use that same kind of terminology, but hindsight's always 2020. And this is really the question. If you think back like to 2010, 2011, 2012, was there ever like, hey, I ate something, I had GI issues for like 2 weeks, or, I was starting to work out, like I got a new dog, we got one of the new dogs, and like my back was bothering me.
I had a little back pain, but I had 3 big dogs. I'm walking, because Bear was he had been thrown out of a car. He didn't trust anybody. He ended up being a like 80-pound dog that didn't like anybody except me, my boyfriend, and my daughter. That was it. And I didn't make him like other people because obviously he was traumatized. And ironically, Bear died of pancreatic cancer. That's a whole nother story. When we went to the vet and found out that he had pancreatic cancer.
Oh my God.
I know. And he lived with us for 8 years and he passed away of that. So when with the dogs, I would have to walk 2 because I always had to take Bear. So one pointer and Bear, the other one done Bear. So I just assumed, well, they pull, they jerk, we see something, pain's normal for 53, and I'm really active. So I really didn't pay attention to the back pain at all. And then I started to get a little out of breath, which that was unusual. And then I had pain, which I didn't know it was my liver. My liver was completely full. It looked like somebody took a black marker and filled it in. My liver was completely full of cancer, completely. You couldn't see. It was so incredibly ugly, full of cancer. So that was what was causing me the pain. But it didn't cause me pain when I ate or anything. I don't drink, so I don't ever drink alcohol. But I noticed that I had a sip of wine one night because they're my daughter and they like, try this wine, and I took a sip and I got like this pain that I had to go home from the restaurant. It was the most severe pain. And that was because I don't know if the alcohol made my liver like just no, because number one, I didn't drink and then it was full of cancer, but I didn't know. The symptom I had was pain, fatigue, and kind of feeling out of breath. But I'm being Italian, being grown up in New York, push, keep going, and I was thinking at the time, well, shit, excuse my language, but if this is menopause, I need to learn how to live with menopause now. This is menopause. So I didn't, until then I was in real pain. And then like I started taking Advil about every 3 hours and it was like, this isn't stopping, like something's really wrong. And I went to urgent care and they just told me, they gave me anti-inflammatories. And believe it or not, I weighed 113 pounds, 5'2", 113 pounds. And the doctor told me that I had a big chest and that's why I had pain. So I said, dude, I had these since I'm 14. Yeah, that ain't. So, no.
Oh my God.
So they just don't know and guess. And that's the huge problem because I feel that the day I went to the ER, I'm very grateful to that doctor who ran the CT scan immediately. Like he heard my symptoms and he didn't say, give me some stupid story. He ran a CT. He was petrified. I felt bad for him. Can you imagine? He comes back in the room like washed over. He sits down, he rolls up, he puts his hand on my knee. He's like, you can't leave. You have spots on your pancreas, liver. Like he had no clue what that was going to show. You could tell he was like, I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. He's scared. Like this all is bad. It's not good.
But you bring up, I mean, I know we're laughing here a little bit with it.
Because it's 12 years ago.
Yeah, but you bring up a very important topic, though, Camille, and I want to kind of maybe sit on this for a bit because there's some interesting things, I guess, as the host, and just hearing your story and listening. A lot of times, people go to the doctor and they don't push back. I guess is what I'm trying to say here. But you push back in both situations. But then when you meet this doctor at Sylvester, like you don't push back, like you buy in like all the way. And you said something when you were saying that's, telling that story, you kind of like never, you said you never look, I'm looking at my notes here, you never looked at the internet. So to me, like you saying that is like, hey, I bought in. And I've said this to people, like there's a business, and I know we were talking about it before we hit record, right? The business of like medicine, right? And this business of cancer. And I've said it in the vein, and not that it's about my story, but like the first doctor told my dad 3 to 6 months, and my mom, parents were immigrants. My mom was like, "Okay, we're out of here. Let's go. Like we're going somewhere else." Like my mom was like, "F you, like we're out of here."
Right.
Like no,
bye now.
yeah, see you later. But so many patients don't do that, and I'm not saying that you have to have that personality like in order to do this, but like I guess so my question to you then is like, why did you say, hey, peace out to that guy, peace out to the second guy, but then that third doctor, like you bought in, like you bought in, like you were in, like you didn't need to go to the internet, you didn't need to talk to anyone else, like you were bought in at that point?
Well, first off, going back is crazy because when I was 23 and my daughter was born, I had kidney failure, and they took me to ICU, and I didn't get to hold my daughter. And she was born cesarean. I had kidney failure, and they told my ex-husband and my mother she's going to die. And when the doctor came in, I said, "Am I going to die?" And he said, "Yes." So I was 23, hysterical, crying that I wanted to hold my baby. They took her. She was a little tiny thing. She was only 5 pounds. I had a C-section. They brought her out, let me hold her, and then they took me to ICU. And when I was in ICU, I had my grandmother's Italian Bible that I couldn't read a word on my chest. And I prayed to her nonstop. Please let me live. Let me raise my baby. Please, please let me live. Let me raise my baby. I prayed to God and my grandmother. And miraculously, 3 days later, my kidneys started working. And they don't know why they stopped, and they couldn't tell me why they started to work. And then I was diagnosed with a kidney disease. And 7 years after the kidney disease went away, because I ate really, really healthy and did everything that doctor told me to do, and I got healthy. So when I was diagnosed, the first doctor, there was only two. I don't know how, but it was the one just ran the scan. He didn't do.
Okay, yeah. So the guy, I guess the urgent care,
the first oncologist.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, "No, it's not going to work." Then when I got my second opinion, he said it will. The reason I believed in him completely is, in my mind, he was a world-renowned best pancreatic cancer doctor that I could get, that I was so grateful to get, that I was so grateful to be with him, that I believed in him with everything. I'm talking to this day, like he told me I live in his heart forever. Can you imagine how he lives in my heart forever? So and I became so close with my nurses that the bond I built with them, and it was just it's hard to explain to people, but they, I guess, came before anyone. And I just completely believed in him, like with everything. And I attribute a lot of my survival to that, because they were like, no, it's going to work. So now I have in my head, wait a minute, this is going to work. Yeah. I used to think I'm getting the Cadillac of chemo. I'm getting the best there is. I'm handling it. I'm learning to manage my side effects. I accepted it. That's what I accepted from day one, because I thought I was going to do chemo the rest of my life. They said, you're probably going to do this the rest of your life. So I knew immediately I need to learn how to do this because I want to live. So I have to learn how to manage the side effects. And, it wasn't easy. I had 10 hours of chemo. Then I'd have the pump for 46 hours. So it was like 3 days straight of chemo. And then I knew that week I couldn't make plans. I was going to feel weak and sick. So I wouldn't make plans. And then the week after that, my off weeks, I always had a lot of plans and I had goals. I was constantly planning trips to go to New York and like crazy stuff. Like, I'm going to New York. I'm going to see James Franco in the play and I'm going to meet him. And everybody's like, yeah. Well, I met James Franco. I was like, oh, I like this guy on ABC. I'm going to write him I wrote it to him. He's like, can I come to the studio? Yeah. So then I went to ABC. Every time I went to New York, I got to hang out at Good Morning America. I met all the anchors, got to know the crew, they kept giving me on air time. So they would give me these little segments where then, I was able to spread awareness. So even though I was having fun, I was spreading awareness. And then, of course, living in Miami, we go to the South Beach Food and Wine. And I met like all the celebrity chefs and, and like everybody, I'm like, I'm stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And they're like, what? And then I found out, because I met Guy Fieri, his dad is a Whipple survivor.
Wow.
Yeah. I told him, you need to bring awareness. So, so like it was sort of, once I recovered and got through, like, because at first it's very scary going off chemo, chemo's keeping you alive. And then it's like, what? What? Whoa. And, in the beginning, it wasn't like, okay, I'm never going to go back to it. At first it was, oh my God, 3 months. It's still clear. It's still stable. It's still stable. It's still stable. And then it took me a long time to get in a mental place where I could be like, live without thinking, when is the other shoe going to drop, And of course you still have fear of reoccurrence. Every patient does, so scan time is a hard time. But for me, I just, started to just go out there and share my story. And, I never talked about cancer. I never liked the word. It was scary to me. Now it's all I talk about. It's just,
So you said something really early. You said acceptance. And I think like one thing I think that's, at least that I've seen, is the people whose stories or journeys have been similar, because none of them are the same.
No.
Are acceptance. And acceptance is like really super powerful in a way, because I think there's like, and eventually I'm sure someone somewhere has maybe done some data on this, on the mental aspect of it. But I think like the acceptance, not that I know from talking to so many survivors that when they have that acceptance, whatever that triggering point is that gets them there, like the quality of life just like exponentially goes up like so fast. And there's a correlation to also, in some cases, a lot of cases, I should say, in disease regression, in terms of their treatment and where that goes. So my next question, since we heard the acceptance, have there been strategies here since, we're almost going on 12 years here, 11 years, where, you have been stable. And as you said, there's some scan stuff, like there's naturally, as being a cancer survivor, that's a natural thing to have. But are there just strategies that maybe you can share that have been really beneficial for, knowing like the last 11 years, like you've been stable, that, maybe there's people out there, maybe they're in their 3 months, maybe they're in that, and this is where, okay, before we get there, I'm going to make a statement. I've said this before. I think the numbers are cooked. I think I have, and Camille, I'd love to hear your feedback because you've been in it as long as I have. I mean, we started in 2010, but you've been in it 2 years later, so it's almost the same time. I feel in the last 5 years, or as we've gotten deeper into the space and into the community, that more people are living longer and longer.
Oh, absolutely. I say that.
So I think this number of, I think it's 12% or 13% right now. I don't really pay attention to the numbers in some aspects, but I've asked really intelligent people and people at senior levels. I'm not going to mention names. Like, where does those numbers come from? Like, is someone out there like checking those people? And I know statistically, like American Cancer Society, and this is not a bash on American Cancer Society, they put out annually like their whole cancer report of the state of cancer. But so that, and I also, and where I'm going to go with this is like that first doctor that you met with was like, oh yeah, stage 4, no hope, right? And no doctor has a crystal ball that can tell where patients are going to be in 3 months, in 6 months, or in 10 years from now. So like how, like no one's ever been able to give me an answer. And the other piece of this too is like we're starting to see a lot of young people, get diagnosed. And I know there was a report recently about young women, but I'm like, nah, there's like a lot of like young people, and I mean like in their 20s and in their 30s getting this cancer, which when we started, I didn't see that. Like we saw a handful, and I knew of a handful. And again, we were in the space pretty heavily. And we follow all the other groups. So if people are getting diagnosed, I know a lot of the bigger groups than us are putting that kind of stuff out. Like, meet so-and-so, is a 25-year-old survivor. But so like, it's just so fascinating to me. But so I want to go back to the acceptance piece here of like strategies maybe that you've used over the last almost 11 years here with what's been going on.
You mean after I stopped?
Yeah. So after the chemo, like you said, like,
well, when I first stopped, remember, I didn't know it was break. So
correct.
I didn't know what was going to happen. So of course that's Helena texted me.
Tell me you're on the podcast with Dina.
So, anyway, when he gave me a break, of course, I'm so happy that I don't have to go. Like that's first off and foremost, but then, the first 3 months was I went back and I was like, you still don't have to go. Like then it, and then it accumulated into being longer. But in those 3 months until I would see him again, I always had a trip plan. My daughter and I would go somewhere. Well, a lot of times, mostly it was to New York. I grew up there. I love the city. And the city kept me entertained and I was having fun and, and I have friends there. So we were always going away. So I always was like, planning a trip, planning what I was going to do, who I was going to see. So I had that. So I always had something to look forward to. But so that helped me a lot, having stuff to look forward to. And even a lot of staycations. We live in Florida. We check into a hotel right here. And because we had 3 big dogs, my boyfriend would sleep here, but hang out at the hotel during the day. Right. But at least he could be here at night for the dog. So we, we kind of always had, there was always, it's Miami. There's always a new restaurant open. And my daughter was like our social director. Okay. She had my social calendar full. I just always had stuff planned and to do, or it was seeing this one or people, travel here.
Stay busy.
I stayed very busy. I never changed who I was. That was the biggest thing. Even the nurses would be like, "Oh, you look so pretty today," or "Oh, you're dressed so cute." Like I always dressed up to go to chemo. My hair was always done. My girlfriend would come over here and she'd go, your hair and makeup's done. I come over here like a scrub, and I'm like, and I was like, sitting on my sofa, like all cute, was my daughter or me were always out shopping. The first time I was able to go shopping, I was in a wheelchair and she's pushing me to the mall. Get me that. And then I used one of those chairs at Target. I was taking down the space because I refused to back up because it does beep, beep, beep. So I'm like crashing everywhere. My daughter was dying laughing. I'm just like, pick it up. Like I'm taking down displays because we honestly had fun. We made just the best of a really bad situation. I had, friends and family around me, and we never talked about cancer. We never talked about none of it. We just never let it interfere with living. And I think that was one of the reasons I never stopped doing what, did I feel bad some days or whatever? But from day one, I felt acceptance and I felt grateful that I was still alive. So how could I feel bad when I was still living and having fun? I was just looking forward to, the future. And I did visualize myself all the time in the future. And I visualized myself healthy in the future. So I did that all the time. I used to talk to the cancer until it leave my body. So I told people I'd get out of my body, stop interfering with my life. I would tell it, because I would wear that pump and I would tell it, kill the cancer cells. And me and my dogs would literally lay in the living room and I would be like, kill the cancer cells, kill the cancer cells, kill the cancer cells, get out of my body. And it sounds a little bit whatever, but whatever works for you. I just kept telling it to leave my body, how to get out. So, and I would physically, visually see it getting out. And
it's so powerful because, and I hope our audience takes this in stride, what you're saying, because I've never had cancer. I assume at some point in my life, given my family history, I probably will go down that road. But from being a person sitting 10,000 feet in the air and seeing so many stories come through our come across my desk, I should say, and come into my life, the mental aspect of this disease is something, and I know mental health, everyone talks about mental health, which I think there's good and bad about that. I think it gets kind of like it used to get a bad rap. I think it's a good rap, but I think it gets a little bit overkilled right now. Like everything's mental health, and I don't know if that's necessarily true. But when it comes to cancer, that mental strength, I would say, that you have and being able to, again, acceptance, and you said grateful, to have that mindset, I call it a mindset, so that you cannot allow your mind, to go into the internet or go down those rabbit holes and think about oh God, but then also think about okay, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to continue to live. Yes, I have cancer, but that's not going to stop me. It's so powerful. And
I feel much more than cancer. That's one part.
Well, we all are, though, right?
Right. That's
only one part. It doesn't define you.
No. And I didn't, especially when I was in treatment. And, a lot of people would go pancreatic, and they make that face at you. Yeah. And I used to say to them, don't go to my funeral before I'm there, please. And they, so I would get very angry when anyone and I would scream out. I mean, I would just snap back at them I have the best world-renowned oncologist in the whole world, and I only listen to him. So, and I also feel just life, that we can make ourselves sick, and we make ourselves well. And mind over matter is amazing. And if you believe, we manifest what we get. You get put out. And that's what I try to teach young people that all the time. So they sit there going, I'm never going to have that job. I'm never going to have that. Well, if you say that, you're never going to.
Correct.
And if you say, and for me, I was like, I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to walk around. I'm going to do, and I did all those things. So because I believed them and I believed in my oncologist and I believed, and I always tell people this is, as much as a physical battle pancreatic cancer can be, I find it to be more of a mental.
Yeah.
It will beat you up and people will look at you like, poor you. And it just has such a bad, the minute you say it, they just think, and they use the word death sentence, which I hate. I find it offensive, actually, because a death sentence is for a felon. I didn't ask for cancer.
Correct.
Felons did a crime. So certain words I don't like,
Well, I think that, how do I say this?
Call it a devastating diagnosis is what I call it. It's devastating.
Yeah, well, there's a reality I think that everyone understands. I like to say, Camille, but I think there are some people in this space that I think, I said before, we keep our blinders on. I worry about what we can do and the impact we can have in a positive way. And this is where this podcast has come to share stories and journeys and bring stories of inspiration and positivity. Not that we are sugarcoating anything, there's a reality, right? Mm-hmm. But also I feel like going back to the numbers, right? I do think the numbers are cooked. I'm not saying that there's 50%. I'm not a conspiracy theorist here because everyone loves to use that term, which is another bad term to use. But I think there's certain terminology in this space that certain people use for a variety of reasons. At the end of the day, we all make our own choices, right? Mm-hmm. Our choice here at Project Purple is we're going to use certain terms and certain things. And I think again, as I said before with the numbers, no one has a crystal ball. There's no God here on this earth that can tell someone that they have a death sentence. So to use those terms, in my opinion, this is Dino Varelli speaking, right, as a person, is you're doing it for one of two reasons. Either you're doing it for motivation. What motivation is that? Is to degrade or to pretend that you have a higher knowledge of than the patient because you went to medical school because you're a jerk doctor, mm-hmm. For lack of a better term here, right. And you have to be on this pedestal because, let's beat your chest because mm-hmm. you think you know everything, which you don't. Mm-hmm. Or people use that term for motivation for whether it's dollars and cents or whatever when talking to potential donors and using terms of, that or numbers. Again, this is my rant, but I think this space, this community, and I think all cancer, we could probably put all cancer into that. I think there's this yes, it's very serious, and I'm not saying that it's not, but I think there's proper terms to use and there's proper ways of going about raising awareness. And this is maybe maturity on me going over 14, 15 years, where I've said, hey, I want to inspire people. Yes, we want to create change, but we want to keep it positive. And I think that's hopefully what we've done. And I hope the medical community, and I know this is a little bit of a rant here, there is a systemic issue within the medical community, Camille, and I'm so ecstatic that you found that guy at Sylvester. And that's why I go back to, I said before, there's so many doctors, and I think compassion and empathy is not anything that is taught in medical school. And I actually brought this up with a researcher over the weekend. I was in DC for a medical conference, and this came up. There's a systemic issue. There's some really super talented people, but they have zero empathy and zero compassion for patients as a whole, not just in pancreatic cancer, but that's wrong. We are human, you're a human being. And
yeah.
So that's where I just wanted to put that out there. I think there's
here's
this to the community
the big problem with your primary doctor, right? And here's how, the only way I can sum this up is this. When you walk in that office, you got maybe a 10-minute window to present your symptom, right? And he guesses. That's all he's doing. He's guessing. He's not running some test. He's like, oh, your stomach hurts, give you Pepsid AC or whatever, or, in my case, it's like, oh, yeah, you're getting tired. Oh, you're 53. It's menopause.
Menopause. Yeah.
Let's just blow it off, right? I had a young girl who died of pancreatic cancer at 18. She was diagnosed at 16. And she was told that, oh, it's your hormones, it's your hormones. And she was a cheerleader and she couldn't cheer and she was in pain and she had a giant tumor. She had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So the problem is that what I find, and I've talked to patients like you have globally across the country, I mean, everywhere. And the most thing that happens to patients is that they're misdiagnosed. They're diagnosed at stage 4 because the regular doctor doesn't know the symptoms. He doesn't look at the history of the patient, really kind of guesses what's wrong with them. And then until they present either jaundice, which that didn't happen to me, and oh, you're jaundice now, you got an issue. And then, oh, we're running blood tests and all this stuff's going on. Or you're stage 4, like I was, and you're presenting with pain and you're like, okay, now I'm in pain, something's wrong. And by the time you're stage 4, let's face it, it's not a pretty picture. And most don't get the response that I had. I mean, I don't like to say it's miraculous because I don't like to use that word, because I put it more towards really good chemo, a really good positive team that made me believe not only in myself, and I believed in my doctor. He told me it would work and I believed him, So, and that I never once let thinking about dying in there. It was like, I didn't have time to think about it. So the more I pushed it off, the longer I was around. Like, I don't want to think about it yet. I'll think about it next month. And I'll think about it, I don't want to think about it just yet, because I didn't want to put it in my mind. And what we put in our head is so important, because if you build yourself up and you think, wait, the chemo's working, I got the best doctor. I felt like I had the best chance. And, and I did. I mean, it worked.
It's powerful stuff, Camille.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've got 2 questions left here for you. And then we are going to share, hopefully, where our audience, if they want to reach out to you, can connect and talk to you. You mentioned something before, and this comes up often, faith. I know you mentioned that time when you had given birth to your daughter, that you had your grandmother's Bible. Has faith been a part of the story?
Totally. My mother was from Italy, and she had faith, just a faith, the old Italian, I was raised in that neighborhood in the Bronx with all those old Italian women. And, I still do the sign of the cross when I put stuff in the oven. I see my daughter doing it, which is funny. Like, I'll see my daughter do the sign of the cross. Me and my brother, if something's broken, we'll just give it a few signs of the cross. Or he'll always text me, like, if I'm going to the doctor, SOC, sign of the cross. We grew up, but everything got a sign of the cross. So she had such a strong faith, and just instilled that in me. And she was the one who said, because my brother was in a really bad car accident when I was 10. And actually, the L train in New York, he was in a Volkswagen van and his head hit the L train. They hit the L train. And he almost died. He was in a coma, and he was in a coma on my 10th birthday. And when he came out of the coma, the first thing he did was write a note to me. I'm sorry I ruined your birthday. And my mother, they all told my parents he's not going to live, blah, 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 blah. And my mother said, and I was 10, I'll never forget, no doctor is God. And they had a faith and they prayed, and my brother recovered. And then my other brother was in a motorcycle accident where he almost died and was in a body cast for 2.5. So I saw these miraculous things within my own family of my mother's faith and prayer that these people were okay. And I just believed in. So I always said, a lot of good medicine, faith, hope, and prayer.
Powerful. That's another, from interviewing so many survivors, the acceptance piece, as I mentioned, is something we see always. Mm-hmm. And then faith, and regardless of whatever your faith, doesn't mean that you have to go to church or synagogue or temple, or mosque, but like having faith in whatever you believe in, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhist, Protestant, Catholic, like it does not matter. But that faith piece just is so critical to believe and to have that backing. So I appreciate you sharing that. And naturally, coming from an Italian American, I can relate to the sign of the cross and everything, all those superstitions, I guess we'll call them.
Actually, I have the horn and the fingers in my car, and little boxing gloves because I'm a fighter from Italy. Like Italy,
I love it.
Of course, I couldn't buy it. My niece had to buy them for you because you can't buy your own horn.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I love it. Last question here, and this is we always kind of preface this by saying it's loaded, meaning there's no right or wrong to it. Mm-hmm. Given your story that you've gone through, again, we're sitting in a cafe, we're talking. Mm-hmm. How do you define pancreatic cancer? What's Camille's definition of pancreatic cancer?
I always think I do things a little different than everyone else. So for me, it took my mother when I was young. I was always had this horrible, thought of it or idea of what it was. But for me, in all honesty, I have to say it gave me a whole new life. I know that it might sound crazy to people, but it's just not. I mean, and it's funny because I don't, as much life as I lived before 12 years ago, which was a lot, I don't feel like I was truly alive until 12 years ago, like really authentically alive. Do you understand that? Like I was like everyone else, like, oh, if you could do this or everybody was sort of, you're always reaching for something else and never really feeling full and happy to, even though you might have all the things that you think you should be happy for. This has taught me just a whole new level of gratitude and really gave me a real purpose in life. Before this, I had a job. I mean, it was a great job. And, but now, here's the thing. I was praying for a new job. And I tell the story a lot because I was praying really hard to God for a new job. And then I got diagnosed. And then God gave me a new job, didn't he? It wasn't the job that I asked him for, but it was the job he decided for me, because the first time my nurse asked me, would you tell your story? I'm like, who wants to hear a story about a lady who had cancer? That's depressing. But then after I told my story and the whole room stood up and applauded, I was like, wait, this is something. And then as I started to share it more with her encouragement, I got to say, because oncology nurses are the heartbeat of the hospital. And without them, there's just no, the patients need the bond that you have with your oncology. They're the one that you call when you're in pain. They're the one you call when you feel sick. The doctor's not on the phone. You're on there with them. They become so important. They're the most important person to you. So I adore my nurses. I thank nurses whenever I meet them because their dedication, and oncology nurses, they're a special breed. They're a very special breed. And I wanted to touch on the mental health. It's so important that if you are going to get a therapist, which I do recommend, they have to be an oncology therapist. You can't go to the regular therapists. They're not equipped to deal with what a cancer patient's going through. Because I tried it. I went to a regular one, and once I saw an oncology, I realized the whole difference. So it's so important for you to get the right type of therapist. I'd like to say, it's so important for patients to get a second opinion because you're dealing with your life, and to push, like you said, push when a doctor tells you, first off, when any doctor gives you a timeline and someone will tell me a new patient, I immediately don't like that doctor, because who's he? Who's he to tell you, oh yeah, you got a year, or you don't know. I had a doctor tell me, don't do chemo, it's not going to work for you. And it worked. It perfectly worked. It worked exactly the way it was supposed to. So I'm living proof of that. No, everyone is different, and everyone has to fight for, your care. So, and you have to get to the right type of cancer center and the right type of oncologist.
Camille, so powerful, everything you just said. I mean, I go back to, I've said it twice now, this will be the third time. No one has a crystal ball, right? And you've proved everyone wrong, and even the experts when it comes to the statistics. And again, no one can tell you that. So you find the people in your tribe or in your community that can support you. And, so many powerful things here. So I just want to say thank you for allowing us the opportunity here at Project Ripple to share your story and your journey. Someone listening or watching, if they want to reach out to you, where's the best place for that?
Usually people reach me through Facebook and just message me through there. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on, I guess, X, but Twitter, whatever.
And it's under your name. So it's Camille
Moses, right.
CAMILLE.
I'm on LinkedIn now as well.
Cool. So any of the socials, just look for Camille Moses. Camille, thank you for giving us the opportunity, and what a blessing you are to be in this community as a positive light. As we said, it's truly been an honor to have you as a guest here on the Project Purple podcast.
I'm honored to be here, and I really thank you, because it's so important for patients to see a good story and know and have hope, and get the right treatment. I mean, there's and like you said, patients are living longer, so we gotta keep doing what we do. But I'm so grateful to you for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. If you like today's episode, feel free to share this episode. Make sure to follow the Project Purple podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. That's a wrap of another episode of the Project Purple podcast. Until next time, please be safe, and thanks for listening.